It's the 31st day in the month of January 2025. Finally, January is about to leave. Did you feel that way too? Or for you, just a normal month? Some persons say that January is 2 months in one. You can share that with us. Hashtag frontburners and tell us how the month of January has been for you if you think it's been longer than 31 days. That said, I am Blessing Eichie and this is the frontburners. I never fly solo on the show. My guys are here with me. Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Blessing. Looking good this morning.
Thank you.
As always.
Thank you very much. And David Chiedu. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, for some stories that made it into the news, let's start with the one that should make women happy because it's about bridging gender gap. As the Vice President of Nigeria, Shettima, has launched project hashtag She's Included, says women will lead Africa's $29 trillion economic ambition. Now, when we talk about gender inclusion, bridging gender gap and making women or putting them at the forefront, having some projects to empower women and all that. Yes, some have been done, but so much more needs to be done. But saying that women would lead the $29 trillion economy, which Africa is aiming at, is that realistic? Are we doing enough to help empower women so they can actually be at the forefront of that, Doc?
Well, I really don't know. Every time I hear this conversation about women empowerment, the first question that comes to my mind, who disempowered women? And that's one thing that, as Africans, we have spent too much time discussing. And we really don't put some significant actions on the ground. And I think these are products of some stereotypes, if I may call it, and depending on where you're coming from. Maybe stereotype of religion. But we have seen in this country, for example, even prior to independence, where women were celebrated. So, when you see women is not included, who is excluding women really? We have a population of women to men that is even in their favor. So I just feel that it is women who need to take the bulls by the horn and do what is needful. I don't think it's a special intervention, because the special intervention seems to me a way of some people only empowering themselves and not dealing with the issue which is on the ground. Women has been huge contributor to economy, whether we like it, whether it's informal or formal. There are some places in the side we come from that the real economic stay of the family is actually the woman. While some of the men are busy drinking early in the morning, the women are doing the economic activity. So I think it's a mindset thing that needs to change, in my view.
Well, it's a mindset thing, but not totally a mindset thing, because for some women, they have to work extra to prove their relevance or to actually take a share of what is on the table. Yes, I know you would say that power is not served a la carte, it's buffet, so you have to go there and take your share. But if in an industry where the female participation in that industry is low, you know that what the woman is running against is more, so she has to more like double effort. In the aspect of education, if we talk about empowering women, you said the question is who disempowered women? By culture, by tradition, by some other unwritten rules, women have been disadvantaged in certain parts of Africa, but that's beginning to change. A lot more still needs to be done. In some areas before, in Nigeria, where you used to have more boys enrollment in schools, some of that has even changed now that you're beginning to see more girls enrollment in schools compared to enrollment of boys in school, like in the East. It seems like that push to see that, oh, there's no discrimination as to whether or not to send your girl child to school or send your boy child to school, that has really been taken care of. But for economic power, maybe because of some wage disparity in certain sectors, that's still an issue. In areas like sports, even in entertainment, and some other sectors, there is wage disparity between male and female. We cannot overlook that. But broadly, I think that the push to give women what skills that will empower them so they can have some economic power has actually improved. But there still needs to, more needs to be done, because when we look at the skills that some women are acquiring, some of them really cannot bring in much to the table. But it's also a personal thing for the woman to decide what kind of skills does she want to have. If we look at women in science, men in science, the ratio of men to women in science is actually higher. Maybe because a lot of women have not really embraced science. Some have, but we still do not find a lot of women in science compared to men in science. Girls in tech are doing it too. We still need more girls in tech. So overall, I would say that globally, that drive to ensure that women have the right opportunities, or they are placed in places where they can have access to opportunities and they have what it takes to harness those opportunities, have actually improved. But a lot still needs to be done in the area of education, economic opportunities, and so many more. Even in health, a lot still needs to be done.
You see, there's a point that for me is quite very important why we have this conversation. Is the fact that when people talk about wage discrimination, I'm also sure that it's something that's actually written in any law book, but rather in circumstances that seems to dictate those conversations, which is, of course, was a contribution. It's like saying that the people playing in EPL and the people playing MPL, they are not any the same. They are playing football. You can pay the man who is in EPL and buy him and he'll be taking $100,000 per match. And the one who is playing the local league here can't even get $100,000 in salary. What's the difference? It's contribution. It's contribution. So it's not because that people deliberately went to go and give money to the people who are in EPL as against those who are playing in MPL. The truth is that in Nigerian Football League cannot produce money. Nobody is watching it.
That's a very extreme example, I would say.
Yeah, but it looks extreme, but that seems to be the reality because it's contribution.
If we take female sports and male sports, for instance, let's take the game of lawn tennis. Let's take the game of lawn tennis, and we have female lawn tennis players that are doing very well. There are tournaments for female lawn tennis players as they are for male lawn tennis players. But if we look at that, there's still even a disparity in the wage that they earn. Would you say it's basically about contribution, or even though there's no written law, certain things have become regular practice in certain industries?
Regular practice, yes. I'm going to jump off of that last statement, regular practice, and then circle back to what Doctor said earlier about more like asking a question about who put women at a disadvantaged position. I would strongly disagree. Regular practice, systems, structures, over the years, we've seen that these, aforementioned entities have actually put women at a disadvantage, Doctor. We've even heard in recent years in political windows where women seem to be like the front runners for a particular position, subnational or otherwise. And then you have some, deep pocket, big muscle politician coming to out-muscle the woman, more like shove her to the background. I don't want to mention specific cases here, but we know these things. They have been seen to happen. Anyone who's going to say that they don't happen is being disingenuous. But away from that, if you're talking about inclusion, the overarching essence of inclusion and making sure that women, oh, by the way, as far as last year was concerned, just about a year ago in January, the population was skewed in favor of the men. Women, population of women were about 49-point-something%, and men slightly above 50. That's out of about 220-something million Nigerians. That's by the way.
So, wait, sorry, does that mean that women can begin to marry two husbands? I'm just asking.
Good one. But a study was carried out by Africa Journals, right? Africa Journals Online, in the southwest of Nigeria, to ascertain the people who were financially included, formal financial services, and the men were significantly more than women. The disparity was about 11.3%. And then, otherwise, that's for the informal ones, you had more women than men. Then when it came to credit facilities, that's the, using credit facilities, excuse me, in formal financial institutions, there were more men with about 13-point-something% more than women. So this tells you something. If these women cannot be financially included or can't get credits, or as it were, what it does is it limits a wider business perspective. 1 second.
No. Why you continue so that you land on that point? Is it that women approach bank for loan and they are not given? Just so that we can have the data right. So say, because if I am ambitious and I want to do something and somebody else doesn't want to do it, so how do you use that as a yardstick to determine that somebody is excluded?
Sometimes these processes aren't spelled out clearly. They're not in black and white. I mean, look at cases where, you have to, because of certain traditional or cultural practices, women have to seek consent from their husbands, or as it were, the power figure, if you like, in their lives, or father figure in their lives before they can do certain things. These are things that we know. But moving on.
Because I don't know, that is why if you say we, please exclude me.
But there have been reported cases. There have been reported cases, doctor.
In the tier 1 banks in Nigeria today, declaring trillions in profits, they are led by women.
As CEOs, not as beneficiaries or loans.
No, as CEOs. Heading those organizations.
But the CEOs do not make decisions in isolation.
But you would be putting it rightly if you spoke about the proportion. That's the word I was looking for. The proportion of women to men in those high and mighty financial institutions. But let me finish my thoughts. So what you have from these disparities is a limiting of a broader business perspective, an unequal distribution of what's the word I'm looking for now? Unequal distribution of
power, or
not power. There's a word I'm looking for. You could call it that, and financial strength or financial muscle, as the case may be, for want of the word I'm looking for. And then, of course, you can talk about the impact on social development, because if you don't have a wider pool of talents that involves, both genders, you now start to see that there is a bit of a limiting factor somewhere, right? Now, let me take you outside the shores of the country. Rwanda, back in 2003, if memory serves me right, they had a quota system implemented where it was supposed to cater to women across the board, making sure that there must be, in fact, it was mandated that there be a 30% representation of women across the board. Now, what happened over the years is that, oh, by the way, it was not just for candidates, it was reserved specifically for women. What happened over the years is that there was an exponential growth of women in governance position by a significant amount, from about 30 to 40-something%, as at 2011 or thereabouts. And then in 2013, what we had was a skewed population, or a skewed proportion rather, where we had well over 60-something%, which was the first time in a long time that anybody saw on the African continent that you had more women in government representation. Where is Rwanda today? That's the question we should ask ourselves. Rwanda is one of the thriving nations on the African continent where even people like you and I want to go and have a holiday, want to go and relax, want to go and, enjoy ourselves for a little bit. Now, come back to Nigeria. In 2006, we had the national gender policy that was, established to take care of these concerns for women. There was a 35% affirmative action with regards to that particular policy. It did its best to achieve that, but there were still criticisms as to its efficacy, in actually taking care of the issues as it were, or as we knew them to be. Where are we today? It's been said that economies that have more women representation have thrived more. If you look at other countries of the world, particularly in Europe, I mean, before now it was Croatia, before now it was Germany, Angela Merkel and the likes, or her contemporaries in Europe. Look at what they were doing. Look at what they were able to achieve. So essentially what I'm saying is, it is necessary and important. I wouldn't particularly toe that line to say that if you don't take it, it will not be given to you. While that might be true, it's also questionable because in some cases, as I've mentioned earlier, you find that these people really truly want to, but for some reason, the systems, and these systems, as ambiguous as they are, we know that they exist. Now, there's also another argument of tokenism. There's an argument of tokenism. Oh, you just want to give us because you think that we are at a disadvantage, not because you really want us to have any real power. That's even a problem in and of itself. So they shouldn't just be, quote unquote, given these things, but the opportunity, the veritable opportunity should be presented to and for them so that they can actually have real power, not just the seats, not just the position.
You see, David, the arguments for women emancipation, I don't think is something that we have to put at the doorstep of system or structure. You see, if we have to create a world where there's balance, we also have to look at some certain things. I jokingly say to people, see, women are the ones who put themselves in disadvantage. And I don't think it's by men. Honestly speaking, and at that also, you hardly, for example, in an environment where you find yourself out, that if women begin to assert equality with men, some of all these things that you are pointing to will not be there. So everybody gets out to the space. Take, for example, at the intellectual arena, people come for interviews. They're interviewed, and you show your competence. Nobody's going to disregard you because you're a woman if you can contribute. So what for me is important, I shared with a congregation yesterday, and I said to them, especially in the church setting, where people seem now glorifying poverty, as if a Christian is poor, it's a virtue. And I told them it's a vice. It's actually bringing the glory of God down. Because in Scripture, the Bible says, ship your grain abroad. It's a principle. And after a long time, profit will come to you. Invest in 7 businesses. No, 8. Because you don't know what disaster is coming upon the earth. And I said today, when they're talking about management, people are talking about multiple streams of income. But in the word of God, it is 8 streams of income. So you can't lazy yourself out and then blame it on God that because we're seeking righteousness or holiness that make you poor. No, I'm just using this as an example to say that If I take blessing out now, you want me to buy the meal? Isn't that? So because he feels that the bill is not ours, it is for the men to pay.
Doctor
so he who pays the bill,
doctor is going somewhere else.
Yes, of course.
I get where you're going to. You're going to, if we're saying that we want equity,
yes,
so it should be across board.
Across board.
Let me respond to that. Starting from where you talked about women emancipation, I want to say that when we talk about bridging gender gap, it's not about emancipation, it's about empowerment. Emancipation would mean you're liberating someone who's under slavery. Empowerment would mean that you want to give more strength, more ability to someone who already has some form of advantage. So there's a difference here. I would focus on empowerment rather than emancipation, because I do not believe that there is any need for emancipation. It's just empowerment. Now, if you say women have been the ones who disadvantage themselves, that is not correct in my view. Because if we go back to history and how women have evolved and how society has evolved, we find that there have been several systems globally that put women in a disadvantaged position. For some countries, it's of recent that women were even given the right to exercise their franchise. Would you say that the women did that to themselves? In some other places, it was about education. The girl child was seen as your place is just in the kitchen. So why is she going to school? Why invest in her education? Until some years down the line, we began to see people fight for it, that women should be given that same chance, that same opportunity as men for them to pursue education. You cited an example of applicants coming up for interviews, and if you're male or female, what the employer is seeking is who best delivers. That's a different case. But even in that same case, there are women who would be sexually harassed. There are women who would perform well, have better grades than men, and then the recruiter or even the employer says, yes, you're good, I could give you this job, but there's a condition attached to it. And so if that woman is not willing to succumb to that, she doesn't get a job. That's a disadvantage, not by the fault of the woman, but because there are certain systems, because men had the opportunity early to start the running ahead of women, so they are better placed whether or not we like it. Women are just playing catch up right now, and there are certain industries where men are more, we have men dominate them, women are just coming up. So you already have the men placed in the top echelon. So it's a catch-up game for women. Yes, we have some women who are lazy, where I talked about women in science and women in certain faith. If you ask maybe a regular girl this day, maybe a Gen Z, no shade to any generation, what do you want to study? What would you like to be? Some of them want to go for areas of fields they consider very comfortable, that can give them the chance to slay and not just be baby girl. But some are doing extra beyond what you would see like regular jobs, doing extra in fields that you would think that, oh, by reason of you being a woman, you have family to attend to. Yes, the man has family to attend to, but who's the caregiver in the home? It's the woman. That's a responsibility that she carries as much as being a career woman. These things act like a burden to the woman that she has to ensure balance in the home front and also in the career. Would you say those are not disadvantages?
Let me.
So there is so much more that we can talk about. Now, coming to the last aspect where you talked about if we go out, who pays the bill? Now, there are certain aspects of culture that still remain the way as they are. If we want to change it, then it's for the parties involved to negotiate how they want to do that. That could fly in the US, maybe because their culture for now accept that. But in the Nigerian culture, if you go out on a date with a lady, if she says let's share the bill, or you want you guys to share the bill, she accepts, that's fine. But for generality, they will say no, because we still live in a system where the man in the home, in some cases, is the major provider. So that is still carried along. So if we want to change all of that, then let's change the system where you don't tell a woman because you have pretty legs, you have pretty eyes, whether you have first class or not, I'm looking at those pretty eyes, I'm looking at those pretty legs as what will give you the job first.
Let me take it from that
Close
last
that
part.
pretty leg.
Yeah, let me
Wear clothes that
Let
is
me-
long
let me-
enough.
let me take it from that last part.
Even if you wear
Let
something that
me take it
covers
from
your
that
face.
last.
Because
Doctor,
you are
one
breathing
second.
as a
Doctor,
man.
one second.
Oh, so that's an excuse.
Doctor,
You
one
were
second.
excusing
One second, doctor.
the misconduct of men.
You are
All right,
floating it
so
as a
No,
man.
that's
here's
an
the
excuse
thing.
for the misconduct.
Here's the thing. I like that we can disagree over this, doctor. I missed this actually, by the way. So as far as the dating game is concerned, I think it's peculiar to the people involved. Whatever they agree
Exactly.
works. But that's by the way. You took the words right out of my mouth, Blessing. I was not expecting that you would jump on that point which Doctor made, but you did, and aptly hit the nail on the head where he spoke about the intellectual space, right? And then you cued in what actually does happen in said space, where in most cases it's a level playing. Actually, in all cases, it's a level playing field. Well, most cases, beg your pardon. There's the male, there's the female. Then they're both equally qualified. In some cases, the women more qualified than the men. And then they would tell the man, "You're good at this job, but we're going to give it to her." And then they're not giving it to her because she's much more qualified, but because they think that there could be some ancillary benefits, as he were. And this does not. Now, here's the twist. This does not apply to just men. Now, the next thing I'm going to say, I'm not saying it because I heard. I've lived the experience in my career where female bosses, very powerful people, have declined to hire their fellow women. Not because they are not fantastically qualified, but because they see them as eventual competition. And I'm thinking to myself, why should they be your competition? You are the owner of the firm. Why do you think this person is competition? Why do you think this person is going to, at some point, cause a distraction in your organization to the male folk? Because that's how they see them, a distraction. They are attractive, they are smart, they are this, they are that, they are connected, and then all of a sudden, some complex sets in. Inferiority, if you want to call it that, I don't know what it is, but it's certainly a problematic issue.
So who do you blame for that?
That's what we're talking about. That is the system.
The blame-
like I said,
the
remember,
blame
doctor,
goes
I
both
said it's
ways.
ambiguous.
For that.
It's an ambiguous system.
You
The
see,
blame
right?
would go
See,
both
this
ways.
is why
But for
they-
that, I will blame.
I am of the honest opinion that we can be all we want to be. Anybody born, whether it's a man or a woman, can aspire to become anything. What we just need to do, I don't like when people pay lip service to things that are germane. It's unfortunate I don't have a female child. My
I'm
father,
a female child.
yes. My father had 4 boys and 4 girls.
Wow.
We were equal in number. We were trained the same way. The same opportunity and leverage. And I can tell you, where my sisters are married, many of them are doing better than their husbands. So this is family kind of conversation. I can't see myself give birth to a baby girl and not drive her to succeed. So I think that is what it is. There's nothing that is written. Anybody who is successful, whether it's a male or a female, is always celebrated. But there's a bit and dint of hard work. And which is my counsel to many women, to think that beyond what we bring to the table is not our body feature. Our mind should be what we bring to the table. And that is important. I also even noticed that's why we're growing up as children. That you see, that every effort even to make the female child to even read is difficult. Absolutely difficult. And I don't know why it's like that.
For the female children that you saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that I saw. I mean, I'm talking about my siblings. I'm not talking
Okay,
about.
okay.
So it's difficult. Pushing that, look, read. So the level of, you see, energy you have to put here and put there. So, but you see some really exceptional ones who love book to the core. And nobody can downgrade them. Talking about people taking advantage of people, whether it's in school or anything. Even men suffer the same. And that's why today they talk about sorting and sleeping in the school system. And that's corruption that affects both ends. And I don't think it's targeted at one segment of society. Somebody said to me, oh, when a woman is married, it's look inferior in where it's married. But the truth of the matter is that they don't look at the other side. That same woman who is married and is looking inferior in the husband's house is also very powerful in her father's house. So if you go to the Igbo culture, they call them the Umuadas. They are empowered. And nobody shoved them aside. So these are the conversations.
They are empowered.
They are empowered. Nobody shoved them aside.
The flip side to that is, just as you have the Umuadas, because I'm from both sides. I'm from the Niger Delta, I'm from the east. You have the Umuadas, you have the Umunnas.
Yes.
It's not like these people are exclusive. There is the flip side to
yes.
both. Because there is the Umunnas, which is the men, the council of men or the
yes.
group of men.
Yes.
You also have
because
the Umuadas or the first daughters or the powerful women in the clan. So it's like one and the other. What's good for the goose
yes.
is good for the gander.
Yes.
So it's not like it's a
unitary
female organization.
And the fundamental thing is that they are empowered. Means that there's an empowerment.
Exactly.
Not just them pushing
so
by
what I'm
themselves.
saying is to take the narrative away from the culture. That what seems to be making the women not to ascend is because there are some cultural barriers. So culture recognizes the place of women, and there's no real culture in Africa that is really anti-women.
There are certain cultures that are anti-women.
You see, for me, I looked at it this way. If you take, for example, people complain about the law of inheritance. The law of inheritance. If you come to my culture, for example, the female child, it seems to have an inheritance in the husband's house. So he can't have inheritance in the husband's house and then come and have inheritance in his father's house. It will become inequity. So we must understand the way our cultures are wired. That the way this thing is designed is done in such a way. I grew up to meet my father. He was a farmer. He has farm. He set a portion of farm for his wife and set a portion of the same farm for his sisters who are married outside. If you want to call it empowerment. So that is where I grew up. So I didn't find an environment where there's a cultural balance that says women can do this, women cannot do this. No. But yes, there are some stereotypes. And those things, and I think they are issues of the mind, that for the true empowerment of the woman or the girl child, and I think they must be deeply involved. And it's not something that you are saying, okay, come and fill this place, whether you are qualified or you are not qualified, because it's quota. And I don't think that's a merit system. And I feel if the world must make progress, and talking about 29 trillion African economy has to be driven by merit and competence.
Okay, I'll take it from there. So if we're talking about giving some quota, as you use the word, to women, let's use the 35% affirmative action, for example. We haven't gotten any administration that has met that 35% affirmative action. In the last cabinet that, or the cabinet of the current administration, we saw about 8% representation or thereabouts, but we haven't gotten 35%. If we say we want to fill 35%, I do believe that if there's a scouting for women who are qualified for those roles,
who's going to do the scouting?
Because it's appointment and not election.
No. Who is going to do the scouting?
Because, hold on, Doc. Because it's appointment and not election.
The same men will do the scouting for the women.
Hold on, Doc. What I'm saying is this, that if we say we want to fill up that 35% affirmation, because it's appointment, the roles will be appointed and not women elected into position. If there's a scouting for it by the executive to say we want to fill these roles, just the way you scout for ministers, just the way you appoint ministers, just the way you you give people positions of headship of MDAs. They are not the ones who come forward to say, please pick me to be minister here. They are not the ones who come up to say, please pick me to be DG in this space. It's just that some of them have been around the corridors of power or have been heading certain places. And then you say, oh, this person, I think, can run this role. You put the person there, you appoint the person to head that particular space. There are people, women within the corridors of power. There are women who are playing in industries that can fill that 35% affirmative action if we want women to be there. That is on one hand. Then, going back to the issue of empowerment and mindset, yes, every person owes themselves the responsibility of achieving success. But how a person grows matters. The environment in which people grows matters. That could change their mindset. That could define the mindset. If a person grows in an environment where they have been put down, or they have been talked down, or been made to feel that this is the level you can get to, it takes a lot of push for them to be able to break the ceiling. So not everybody will be able to break any ceiling over their head, because the environment in which we grew up are different. How we respond to that environment is different. We must acknowledge that fact. So it's a mindset thing. Even in culture today, no matter how much civilized we've become, there are certain roles a woman picks up. There are certain ways a woman lives her life because it defies societal norm. It does not conform with societal norm. You have people telling you, women don't behave like this, so women don't talk like this, so women don't do like this. If you do this, there's a social consequence for it. Oh, if a man sees you talk this way, the man sees that you're too powerful, men may not want to marry you because you're this. We still have some of those stereotypes being happening because it's a system, it's a culture over time that people have grown in. Even in domestic setting, the way a boy is raised is different from the way a girl is raised. The roles that they are assigned are different. A boy may be permitted to sit in front of the screen, playing game, PS, all of that. But the mother comes into the home and say, hey, if you're a girl child, Grace, what are you doing there? Get into the kitchen. But the boy is excused because the mindset is this. You will get married as a woman. You'll be the one in the kitchen cooking for your husband. Oh, the man, all he needs to do is provide money. He doesn't need to have any business with domestic rules. That's still an issue in the way we raise people and in the choices of courses that girls can study. Some girls will say they want to study a particular course, but that says, no, you're a girl. This will be better for you. Things like that still happen. And that's why, as a culture, as a people, we must also help to shape the mindset of women, of girls as they're growing, so that they are better able to break whatever stereotype, break whatever ceiling that hangs over their head. That's part of empowerment.
You see, competition is what makes the world sweet.
Well, fair competition, I would say.
Yeah, competition. See, you see, when people get into competition, people do things, and I think that we need a lot of women who are adventurous. We are even in a society that has glorified some women. There are some names we cannot, when we are writing the history of Nigeria, for example, we cannot omit in the last century. We can't forget Okonjo-Iweala in a hurry. We can't forget Professor Dora Akunyili in a hurry. Or Biozie Ezekwele. We can't forget them in a hurry. And I don't think anybody is pushing this kind of people aside to the back.
But if they tell their story, they might tell you what they have to push against.
But they have pushed the boundary, which of course, even between men, don't men struggle to get into office? Haven't you heard what they call horse trading in politics? So it happens, it's not only with women.
All right.
Men are in competition with themselves. And I feel that women join the fray, just making it sweeter and better. And when you are coming, come with your head.
Okay. That's a good one. When you're coming with your head. But all that is needed, all hands must be on deck rather, to ensure that we move both gender to where they should be. And no system is set to bring any down. But when you're coming, like Doug said, come with your head. Don't come with a fine face alone, or don't come with some muscles alone. Come with your head.